Hello students, today is going to be a quick video on how to communicate with someone that is essentially an authority figure. It is always best to err on the side of formality. Now that means I'm going to create two different emails so that you can see the differences between each. And this would be your way of communicating with me. The first one, I'm going to write an email to my boss, Mr. Byarski. So what you're going to want to do is you should always use the most professional email that you have for communication. So for you guys, you should be using your school email. It's better to use your school email than to use a personal email that has something like a nickname in it or is harder to identify where the email came from. Starting it. First thing you want to do is you definitely want to type in who it's to. You do want to put something in the subject bar, so I'm just going to put example email for students. Okay. Then what you're going to want to put in the very top is you need to have a salutation. You need to greet the individual unless you are very familiar with them. This is Mr. Byarski. He's my boss. So I can write, Dear Mr. Byarski, or because I am more familiar with him, it is okay that if I write Mr. Byarski, I put a comma and I go down a line. Then I indent. If you have a tab, you can use the tab. However, a lot of the times when you try and use tab when you're doing email, it's not going to allow you to do that. So a tab is essentially the same thing as 5 spaces. So I'm going to hit 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I want to direct my email to him regarding my concerns. So I'm going to say Mr. Byarski, and I'm going to think about why I want to write to him. You might say, Miss Simi, I'm writing to you to tell you about a missing assignment, but you want to explain it in detail so that the individual who you are communicating with understands. So I'd write, Dear Mr. Byarski, this is an email that is acting as an example for my students. This email is showing how to communicate with someone in a position of authority. Okay, so I made sure I addressed him as Mr. Byarski. Now, if I were writing to a different individual, if I was addressing a female, it's always best to use Ms. Some individuals are offended by using the wrong title. If somebody who is married, they would usually use a Mrs. Not all the individuals require that. Ms. is the typical title for a female, and it does not depend on their marital status. Miss usually implies an unmarried woman. I use Miss instead of Ms. because of my last name. Ms. Simi sounds awkward to me, whereas Miss Simi just sounds better. And because I am more into how things sound, because I'm a poet, I use Miss. So, going forward, you make sure you address the email, you make sure you cover that, you make sure you explain. You should also include something at the end that tells them that essentially that this is over, and you want to be polite. So you might say something like, thank you. You might go further and say, thank you for your time. Thank you for your concern. Thank you for your interest. You might want to go something along those lines. It is always best to be as polite as possible because you are looking to get something through your communication. Most of the time you are letting someone know that maybe something went wrong, maybe you're explaining something. Then at the end, you want to sign it, and you should sign it formally. I sign mine with my name, Miss Leah Simi, with my first and my last name, and I include my pronouns afterwards. It is a way that I am showing how I identify and how I'm comfortable with others identifying me. So you want to make sure you include that. Why? If you sign it simply, Emily, I may or may not know who I'm talking to. Okay, for instance, I know that I have multiple Madisons, or I might have multiple Mackenzies. If you just sign it Mackenzie, and I can't tell from your email address who I'm talking to, then I might be confused. You want to make sure it's very clear who I'm corresponding with. So I give as much information here as possible. Then you're going to want to, of course, send it. Very simple. I'm going to hit send. And I am done. Now, if I were composing something to a friend, I would be looking at something in a less formal setting. This is where I might write to someone and I might use their first name. If you're communicating with an authority figure, you should never just address them by their first name unless you have established a relationship and that individual has started referring to you by your first name and they have asked you to refer to them by their first name. One way that you can see that is if you look in their emails and they address you as just by your first name, then you can sometimes go along the same route. However, when you are talking to teachers, you should never use their first name until you have graduated. So thank you for this. I'm hoping this helps a little bit with how you communicate with your teachers, especially in this modern world. It's always more important to be as formal as possible and as polite as possible, as well as trying to be understanding, because a lot of the times you're trying to clear up communication. Thank you. I hope to hear great emails from you soon. Bye.